Agricultural Extension Education. In the last week of this course, we made an attempt to understand the dimensions of extension, the process of extension, the process of program development, and the program planning process. In this week, we will be discussing about the pre-independence extension programs. Basically, these extension programs are intended to introduce certain changes in the rural life of the country. The era of 1800s has witnessed good number of severe droughts. In the entire 1800 to 1900, in 100 years, there have been 33 severe droughts the century has seen. Between 1875 to 1901, there were 18 severe droughts. Because of these things, there was an essential element of change that needs to be introduced in the entire country, in different parts of the country, because of the grim situation which India faced at that time. When we look into the historical aspects, the Indian villages were self-reliant, self-sustained, and self-governed. This entire system was destabilized by various invaders the Indian subcontinent has seen over a period of 700 to 800 years ago. So that changed the deliberate intervention of extension programs so that we can bring back the normalcy in the life of the rural population. So with that objective, we started with these programs, wherein in this class, we will be discussing about 4 important programs, that is, the Sriniketan Experiment or the Shantiniketan Attempt, Gurgaon Experiment, Maranath Dam Attempt, and Firka Development Scheme. The Sriniketan or the Shantiniketan Attempt was conducted by Sri Rabindranath Tagore ji. He was a Nobel laureate, a poet, a painter, a freedom fighter, and novelist too. There are so many attributes which we can associate with Rabindranath Tagore ji in addition to his philanthropic work. Then, in the context of agriculture and allied sciences, apart from establishing an university for imparting education, focusing on women empowerment, women education, and all those things. But in addition to that, he made some deliberate attempts to see certain deliberate changes in the context of agriculture and allied sciences. The objective of Shantiniketan attempt or the Sriniketan attempt by Rabindranath Tagore include to create real interest in people for rural welfare work. That is why he motivated the people to take up real interest in rural welfare work, then to study. The next objective is to study the rural problems and to translocate conclusions into actions. We can go on enlisting the problems after problems, situation after situation that are prevailing in the rural areas. But are we really interested in translating those conclusions into actions? No. The conclusions that we are referring to are part of the program planning process. The program which has been prepared after analyzing the existing situation, now its implementation needs committed group of individuals. That too with all the disadvantages. We are working for disadvantaged communities. So how can we implement this particular program? So that was another important aspect of program launched by Rabindranath Tagore ji. Then the next objective being to help the villagers develop their own resources. So before development of the resources, there is a need to identify the resources that are existing in your own region. May it be the human resource, may it be water resource, may it be land resource, or may it be various other resources. then you develop on that so that you can respect and you can enhance the existing resources. Then the next objective being improvement of village sanitation. Exactly after about 110 years after we are working on the improvement of the village situation, and this was visualized by the visionaries like Rabindranath Tagore, you can realize the importance of this sanitation. The modus operandi that was adopted by Rabindranath Tagore include the methodology, how the objectives were met to achieve the development. The first one was to organize and motivate the youth, because that is what is the promising future of the country. Enough emphasis was given on organization of youth. The moment they start working together, so then obviously we start getting the results. So that was the basic thing. The development of the village leadership, which is considered as a panacea for all the rural problems. So the youth power, which is entering into the village for introduction of the change, is intended to develop the village leadership, which in turn, in the long run, strategically is going to address the problems of rural communities forever. So that was the basic idea and the modus operandi of the program launched by Sri Rabindranath Tagore ji. And another thing he emphasized upon was self-help is the best help. How I can help myself, or one can help himself by initiating the activities which are required by his own community, by his own family, by his own surroundings, his own environment, on his own with the help of himself as well as community, that is that he is living with. Maybe to begin with, we need the external support, but in the long run, the individual, the group, the community has to come together to address the problem, because the external forces or the external agencies, the institutions which are providing you the services have their own limitations. So this was another learning that we can have from this particular program. Since the historical period, agriculture and the animal husbandry are the enterprises which are combining together. Both are having symbiotic relationship, and that is how they are being identified as agriculture and allied enterprises. So, in addition to the emphasis on agriculture, enough emphasis was given on animal husbandry so that there is a regular income for the farmers. Then the emphasis was on women empowerment, and they created a class of group of women named as Brati Balika. Training of the women for taking up the developmental activities was one aspect, and training them to act as volunteer to take up the developmental activities, so that was another aspect. Both these were leading towards the empowering of women way back in a century ago. Then a special emphasis on the literacy program for the rural population was also taken place. But we got independence, hardly few people were educated, or what we call literate. But now the the current literacy levels are reaching around 80% of the population is having literacy. In some of the states there are 100% literacy like Mizoram and Kerala. And there are good number of states we are nearing to the 100% achievement of the literacy rate. The efforts have been started 100 years back. More than 100 years back now. Had it been started more than 100 years back, the yields would be better now. So the formal education, the literacy levels are going to enhance the developmental issue. Shantiniketan program, with the basic issue of lack of funds, the much efforts could not be done. And this program could not be extended to a large area. The entire concentration of this program was in a cluster of 8 villages, because the entire program was planned, conceived and implemented by only one person, who is Sri Rabindranath Tagore ji, with his own financial input. Can you imagine? With his own financial inputs, because of which he could not extend much support to the wider areas, and further research could not be taken up in this particular area, and it could not develop much leadership among the communities. And over a period of time, the experiment came to a standstill. But there are still good number of take-home messages from this attempt. Coming to the conclusion of this program, we can see that it was an individual initiative which was having with a philanthropic approach, and there was no support from the established governments, and because of lack of financial support and lack of leadership, the efforts could not last longer. And there was also lack of need-based and location-specific technological support to take up the efficient implementation of this program. With these limitations, even though program has yielded good number of positive aspects, like when we start making the deliberate attempts, people are going to support, people are going to be a part of these programs, and with that we can take up the message of the development, and over a period of time we can achieve the desired results. And using these inputs, the future programs that were implemented, that we will be looking into the next slide. Yes, the next program which we'll be looking into is Gurgaon Experiment and the Maranath Dam Experiment. First, we'll look into the Gurgaon Experiment. The Gurgaon Experiment belongs to the Central Province of India, the then Central Province. The objective of this program include: number one, increasing farm yields, which was the need of the day at that point. Then curtailing the expenditure on social and religious functions, and improving the health standards and organizing welfare programs for the benefit of rural communities. These were the objective of the Gurgaon Experiment set by District Collector of Gurgaon District, known as F.L. Brand. With his initiative, he thought so to introduce the change in then this state. We need to address the issues that what we discussed so far, and the modus operandi, of course. It was for the first time that methodology included was appointment of a village guide. This is very important. Appointment of village guide was done in Gurgaon Experiment. It was for the first time in the history of these extension efforts, and professional was introduced to introduce the change, so that there will be some changes in the socio-economic conditions of the rural people. With that objective, the appointment of the village guide was made. And this village guide was expected to do what? He was expected to be the bridge between the developmental departments and the village communities. F.L. Brand was himself a district collector, and he wanted to administer the program, the developmental programs, through these village guides, so that he can understand the problems of the people, the grassroots problems of the people, and he can send the appropriate message with the help of these village guide to the people over a period of time. The experiment could not sustain longer. Why? Because he was a government officer. Routine transfers hampered his developmental activities, and it could not develop the appropriate leadership which was needed, what he was expecting, but it left an impact. Impact on whom? On the communities. That the concept like village guide can be an instrument of introduction of change in the rural people. So that was the major take-home message from these experiments, and that is why even today we are discussing about the concepts introduced by F.L. Brand in the form of Gurgaon Experiment. The next achievement of Gurgaon experiment that we can discuss under the heading like, as so far as sanitation is concerned, from the point of construction of toilets, providing safe drinking water to the rural communities. This was another aspect of this Gurgaon attempt. From the point of view of agriculture development, development of model farms, improved seeds and implements were supplied to the farmers, and farmers were motivated to take up the cooperative farming, which are the achievements from the agriculture sector. Coming to the changes that were observed in the educational sector include It included the school teacher as the center of activity, and he was the source of motivation for the entire village, and he motivated the people, and because of that there were good number of changes that can be seen in the village. And that is how even today we can see that particular tradition, the school teacher is the center of the activities in the villages. So for this particular activity, there was cooperation from all the corners of the society. And in the case of social reforms, that was objective also, though there were prohibition of child marriages, and the education of girl was taken up on war footing, and in how these some of the changes that we can see out of the experiments under Gurgaon scheme. So moving on to the next program, that is Maranath Dam Attempt, which is popularly known as Maranath Dam Attempt. It was launched in Travancore of Kerala state with the support of Young Men Christian Association. This very times it is asked in the questions, in the support of Young Men Christian Association. Being a religious organization, the emphasis was on development of spirit, mind and body. Spirit, mind and body. To achieve this, they launched a five-sided, or you can say the five-folded program, which is they were emphasizing on the spiritual development, the mental development, the social development, the physical development and the economic development. Basically, to achieve this social and economic development, so they were having the concepts of the spiritual as well as the mental development also. Putting together, the objective of the program was to introduce the change in the communities. The modus operandi, or the methodology of this program was to include self-help with the intimate expert counsel. The communities in the rural areas needed some support. What kind of support? That is counseling, or what we say the advisory work, but an extension has its own expertise in advisory work, for which we need the trained specialists. And what type of that counseling is there? That is intimate expert counseling. Wherever you need the support, yes, people are there to provide you the support to achieve the objective of introduction of change from social, economic, spiritual, mental development. They organized people into groups. What type of groups? That is based on their own profession, that is excelling club or honey club, or what you can say the bull club, weavers club, etc., which were the major professions that were practiced by the village communities. The major change or the introduction of the elements in this program, if you look at, it is forcing or it's motivating people to come together. Earlier, the same farmer was selling his eggs, the same farmer was selling his honey individually. But with this model, is coming together, means all the honey producers are coming together of the same village or the cluster of village. All the egg sellers are coming together, and then they are pooling their produce and selling it in the market for bargaining better prices. Ultimately, it is achieving the social and economic development this way. So even if you look at today's context, so now we have the concept of CIG, FIG, producer group, self-help group, that is the producer group, commodity interest group, farmer interest group. The nomenclature has been changed, but the core issue is the same. What is that? To bring people together. Then you ask them to pool their resources, pool their producers, then bargain for better prices in the market. Coming to the conclusion of these two programs, okay, let me tell you the conclusion by this way. It is there in the previous slide. The extrinsic motivation is an important and essential input for the development. It is what is the motivational inputs provided by the agents, may it is the village guide or the developmental agents or the change agents who are going to motivate the primary producers so that they become part of the process of change and ultimately leading towards development. And the take-home message that I have been repeatedly telling you is coming together is the beginning and working together leads to progress. Then group approach is inevitable for Indian conditions, and it is rightly said now that the similar approaches that are being adopted by the existing governments to introduce the change. And in the days to come, it is going to be more relevant. This group approach is going to be more relevant as day by day our land resources are shrinking. The states which adopted this group approach are yielding better. Battery is slow. Just 1 second, my battery has been heating. Yes. So where were we? Yes, the day by day the land resources are shrinking. So this group approach is going to be more and more relevant. So the states which adopted this group approach are yielding better results, wherein we can witness the agricultural growth rate more than 10%. The states like Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, so on and so forth, who are adopted this group approach are giving results of more than 10% growth rate in agriculture. This was the outcome of the experiment that was conducted a century back. With this, we are coming to the end of these two programs. Moving on to the next program, that is the Firka Development Scheme, where the development initiatives were taken by the then established provincial governments known as Madras Province. The Firka Development Scheme was supported by the then established government in the southern part of India, that is the Madras Province. So the aim of this particular program was attainment of Gandhian ideal of Gram Swaraj by bringing about not only educational, not only economic, sanitary and other improvements in the village, but also making people self-confident. So by this time, since this program was implemented in 1946 by Sri V.T. Krishnamachari, by the time the country understood the importance of Gandhian ideology and they started replicating his model. Similarly, efforts were taken up in the southern parts to attainment of the Gandhian ideal of the Gram Swaraj. The similar issues that we discussed in our previous discussion also, and it is one of the principle as well as the philosophy of extension also. What? To make people self-confident, helping the people to help themselves. Similarly, we said that we are here to make the people self-confident. So how can these things be achieved? So that is the major issue. So for achieving this particular thing, an individual has to be, first of all, self-reliant. The society has to be self-reliant and the community has to become self-governing and self-managed. To achieve this particular thing, so they try to identify the administrative units. That administrative unit is itself known as firkas. The selection of the firkas for the development initiative was based on the general backwardness of the area, where there is possibility of initiating any cottage industries. When we think of these cottage industries, so this is a concept that we have been discussing in different programs. The small scale industries which are part of the village economy, the thing that was planned was to enhance the skills of the people so that we can improve the efficiency of the professionals and bringing the changes in the socio-economic conditions. That was the basic ideology. So when we look into the current initiatives again, even though the program was launched around 70 years back, so even after lapse of 7 decades, the priorities of established government remained almost similar. What was it? With the changes in the technology, with the changes in the situation and the changes in the demands of the communities, so there are certain modifications, but the core issues have remained the same. The cottage industries, development of the skill, motivating the rural people, then preventing the migration from urban areas to rural areas. So these are some of the core issues that the government is working upon. So that is why they emphasized upon establishment of cottage industries. So for there is to achieve the particular aim, the programs that were planned has two types of plans: short-term plans and long-term plans. Short-term plans, basically the development of the infrastructure communications which can be achieved immediately, maybe in a span of 1 to 2 years, so that we can bring in the changes. And there were some plans which were of long-term plans providing knowledge inputs and enhancing their knowledge inputs. Now, it takes its own time. To what extent that we can motivate them and to what extent you can involve them. And attainment of the Gandhian ideology, even today we are working on that. So in some parts of the country, in some contexts, it has been achieved. In many areas, still it is to be achieved, and that was another priority of the plan. Then coming to the implementation of the entire modus operandi, let us have a look into the organizational structure of these objectives. So the collector was made responsible at district level for each cluster 2 to 3 firkas. So there was one rural welfare officer who was supported by the Gram Sevak or the revenue inspector for a team of the revenue inspectors for each 5 to 10 officers for each firka, so that they can analyze the situation, they can plan the program, they can implement the program, and they can evaluate the system and give the feedback to the administration. So this was the organizational structure adopted for the program. Then for each firka, a cluster of professionals that were employed included the agricultural field man to take up the issues associated with agriculture, to provide advisory services to the farmers as well as provide them the appropriate inputs, timely availability of inputs, so that they can bring in the changes in their agricultural practices, they can adopt innovations, and they can enhance their yields. Then there is one administrative officer, and there is a mistris who can take up the sanitation activities and other infrastructural developmental activities. Supervisors, it is the part of the management program and irrigation part of the management program, and a agricultural field man. So there was one irrigation overseer who used to look after the issues associated with irrigation. In those days, it was not well developed, but still, how can we manage the water related issues in the field level? So that was the issue. Then the priority areas of the work that were planned under Firka development scheme include the rural reconstruction, drinking water facility, sanitation, agriculture and khadi and other village industries. So the response of the community was not that much, maybe because of the administrative dichotomy of the professionals who were working there or some other reasons. So restricted scope was observed and lack of coordination between the professionals who were part of this particular system, and that was another important issue that came into the implementation of this program. And another limitation of this program was the lack of direction from the higher ups and supported encouragement from the central authorities. So which was supposed to be given up by the top level administrators to the middle level administrators, and from the middle level managers to the lower level managers. So these things did not happen. Because of that, it could not achieve the desired results. So Firqa development scheme, wherein the development cannot be visualized in isolation, as we have seen in addition to the village industries, agriculture, the development issues related to agriculture are going to be hand in hand. And in the Indian context, development invariably and inevitably include agriculture. And that was witnessed through these programs which were implemented before independence. So with this, we are coming to the end of this lecture. And by now we have discussed about various major issues related to the concept of extension, the concept of program planning, the principles and philosophies of extension, and some of the pre-independence extension programs which were focusing on agriculture as well as rural development in general. With this, now you must be having some conceptual clarity regarding the concepts as well as the process of extension. We'll see you in the next class. Thank you.